haunted asylums. The history of lunatic asylums and their more modern replacements, psychiatric hospitals, is long, dark, and bloody. The institutions began as essentially prisons for people with mental disorders. The buildings were often just collections of empty cement cells to house those deemed abnormal. In the 1800s, when the mentally unwell finally began to be classified as patients, conditions worsened in many ways. Many common treatments for people with mental health conditions were ignorant of both science and medicine and were often vicious and violent. This, coupled with routine abuse of patients by staff, made asylums hell on earth until they were shut down or repurposed during the deinstitutionalization waves of the 1950s and 60s. Since then, many former asylums have sat empty or seemingly empty, as paranormal encounters at these locations are common. It seems centuries of cruelty and torture left many spirits with unfinished business in the facilities. If ghosts are indeed real, then abandoned asylums are perhaps the best place to find them. Here are 10 asylums reported to be haunted, and some have the evidence to back it up. 1. Street Augustine's Asylum, known also as Kent County Lunatic Asylum. Street Augustine's Asylum is located in Chatham, Kent, England. It was opened from 1876 to 1993, and in those 117 years, the building was home to an immense amount of human suffering. In the 1970s, a nurse at the asylum teamed up with a local university researcher to create a lengthy report on all the inhumane injustices they witnessed within Street Augustine's walls. Most notably, they detailed excessive use of electroshock therapy on patients, whether the treatment was warranted or not. Visitors to Augustine's remaining structures report feeling washed, hearing footsteps behind them, seeing glowing lights, seeing orbs, and sudden feelings of dread and depression. And even if there is nothing supernatural about the place, any video of the rotting, gloomy interior is sure to unsettle you on its own. 2. Ararat Lunatic Asylum. Ararat Lunatic Asylum, later renamed Arradale, was the single largest asylum in Australia when it opened in Ararat, Victoria, in 1867. Authorities didn't fully shut the facility down until 1997. It had housed tens of thousands of patients over its lifetime, including thousands of violent criminals whose mental conditions prevented them from being held in traditional prisons. Ararat was frequently cited as one of the most haunted places in Australia until being repurposed as a university. Owed in part to the over 13,000 patients who died within its walls, Ararat was said to be home to numerous spectres, trapped in afterlives of suffering. This has made it one of the most popular ghost tour locations in the country. 3. Taunton State Hospital. Taunton State Hospital opened in 1854 in Taunton, Massachusetts, and over its lifetime, it housed thousands of people with mental health conditions. Most notable among them was Honora Kelly, nicknamed Jolly Jane. Jane confessed to having committed 31 murders and said her goal was to have killed more helpless people than any other man or woman who has ever lived. It's said that her work isn't finished, so she haunts what is left of the asylum to this day. Other rumors about the location persist, including the belief that a satanic cult ran it. Allegedly, the cult would use patients as sacrifices in dark rituals in the hospital basement. Most ghost encounters have taken place in the basement as well, including a shadowy figure that crawls along the walls, watching, and an invisible force that prevents some visitors from getting past the bottom step of the basement stairs. 4. Beechworth Lunatic Asylum. Beechworth Asylum, also known as Mayday Lunatic Asylum, operated from 1867 to 1995 in Beechworth, Victoria, Australia. Over those 128 years, over 9,000 patients died within its walls, and some remain still. One ghost is said to be a woman who was thrown from an upper floor window just for being Jewish, and the rabbi called to move her to medical treatment couldn't arrive in time to save her from a slow death out on Beechworth's lawn. Another is a little boy James who talks to visiting children. There are ghost doctors, nurses, patients, and a whole cast of ghosts beside them, each with their own sad or creepy backstory. 5. Athens Lunatic Asylum. In 1874, Athens Lunatic Asylum opened in Athens, Ohio, taking in both those with mental disorders and the criminally insane. The asylum quickly became overcrowded, underfunded, and notorious for patient abuse. Electroshock therapy and other cruel practices were common, but worst of all is the staff's frequent use of ice-pick lobotomies. Across the facility's grounds are thousands of graves containing unidentified patients. The grave sites lack names but are marked with numbers, though whatever number system they represent has since been lost. Ghosts are almost impossible to miss when visiting the grave sites. Inside, there is supposedly an outline left from the dead body of a patient, unable to be removed by repeated cleaning.